Hello and welcome back, dear viewers. As we know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, in which selflessness, unity, and optimism arise. People all over the world show their support for women affected with breast cancer or seeking to prevent such an infection by following necessary medical instructions to ensure such prevention. In solidarity with women within this occasion, we would like to dedicate this legal segment to women's rights and how women's rights are regulated through national law. Digging deeper into women's rights, we have our guest today, أطياب الشطي, Squire, who is also a women's rights activist. Good evening, Atiyab.
Good evening, Mr.
How is everything with you?
Wonderful. How are you doing so far?
I'm doing so far so great. As we know, expat women, they always urge to facilitate the sponsorship of their children. Is it possible for expat women to do this?
Well, from a legal perspective, it is possible, but let's go through the Code 22. I think you're mentioning in this situation Code 22, in which stipulated duly it is the father, the male guardian, who has the right to sponsor his kids, his children in this position. So when the father is in presence, he has the legal power to sponsor the children. Basically, when the children are born in a country, they get the visa or the Code 22. Unless otherwise, within these situations, it is permissible for women to sponsor their children and to become the sole person or legal personality of the sponsorship according to the visa 22 in the absence of the father. So in duly it is for the father, and then it's for the mother in his absence. So in his absence could be, for example, when he passes away, God forbid. If he ever left the country for good, he was deported, let's say cancelled his visa residency, so he's not in the country anymore. Within this case, it is permissible for women to sponsor their children. And when I say permissible, I mean by that such requisite approval subject to the approval of the General Administration of Residence Affairs in the country. Therefore, when she applies for such a proceeding, it's going to be overviewed and seen by the ministry, and then it could be approved. Moreover, I wanted to negotiate with you, or let's say stipulate, Article 29 and Article 30 of the Ministerial Resolution number 957, regulating the residency law and expatriates' conditions in the country. So these articles, basically, they stated a new restriction. So if any parent ever wanted to sponsor their children according to Code 22 of the visa codes, they have to have a minimum wage of 500 Kuwaiti dinars to be monthly, as a monthly payment for them.
Minimum.
This is the minimum,
yeah.
Okay? And there are criteria of jobs which were excluded. And these are 13 criteria. I'd like to share them with you. So first, court judges, public prosecutors, expert and legal researchers working in the government sector, doctors and pharmacists, university teachers and government school teachers, principals, social consultants, financial consultants, government engineers, masjid imams, and Quran teachers, library trustees, the government library trustees, workers in the Ministry of Health like nurses, paramedics, doctors, and of course, workers in the ministry were the people who most proved their power and proved the need for their experience in the past days of the pandemic. Yeah, so social and physiological workers in the government, journalists and TV presenters, pilots and hosts, and finally those who work for burying the dead. So these criteria of jobs were excluded from that restriction.
Yes, okay. So we mentioned first about the mother's role and what are the conditions and the exceptions. Thankfully, you mentioned all information about this. But let's say the father is here, but he, in which way he stopped or neglected the renewal of the child's visa. What is the mother supposed to do?
Actually, you are touching down a very essential question because it happens a lot. Sometimes the father is there, but just because he's in conflict with the mother or for being just, negligent, they wouldn't want to renew the visa. And sometimes, especially when it comes to the family law and family court, and when there are disputes before the court, one is trying to backstab the other on the child. Unfortunately, the child is being victimized in it. So there is a misusage of this tool. So in certain situation in which the law stipulated the misusage of this tool, in which the father, as you mentioned, is negligent and not doing his duties. So as I told you, according to Code 22, the father is the one who's supposed to and is entitled to do the visa. Within this situation, if the father is there, but he is negligent and he is delaying it, there must be a proof within the mother, with the mother possession, to prove such. And then, instead of going to present, let's say, a form or a request before the government, she's going to take it up to the judiciary system, in which she would file a lawsuit against the father, unfortunately. But the government must be a part of this lawsuit. It is essential because the government has the sole discretion and the legal personality who has the legal tool to grant the mother with the visa. Therefore, once the mother wants to file this lawsuit, she has to include the government as a third opponent or a party in that lawsuit.
Yeah, so this supports her case and it protects her rights.
Yeah,
also.
and basically women have to prove something. They have to prove that there is a delay. Such delay can be proven if it was only 1 day. So 1 day of delay is a damage enough to the child to prove that this child is violating the law. And of course, minors do not violate such, which means it goes upon the father who is negligent the law and not following up with the visa regulations. Therefore, women can file for it.
Yeah, okay. And other respect of other women's rights also, with innovations, with new innovations and the usage of social media, do you think like women are getting abused through social media? And what should we do about this?
Yes, well, it happens. It's not only women being abused, but it's a gender-based violence. This is what we are facing in the country, or actually not only in the country, but it's worldwide.
Yeah.
The gender-based violence through electronic means and new innovations of social media, for example. So yes, in response to your question, basically, yes, there is cyberbullying, there is cyber harassment in which women are being victimized through social media. And when it comes to social media, we would tackle the law 36 for the year 2015 regarding combating cyber crimes. And this law specifically stipulated, or let's say dealt with social media platforms, electronic means, as they are the actual life. So anything that occurs and happens through these social media shall be treated as if it has taken place in public facilities or our life, our normal life. So if there's any crime that is being committed there, which is criminalized by the Criminal Act, it shall be also criminalized according to the law 36 for the year 2015. Because as I told you, it's dealt with as our actual life. Therefore, when we talk about cyber crimes, cyberbullying and cyber harassments, yes, it is happening to women and basically the gender-based violence. So women are facing insulting, they are facing sometimes cursing or calling them with disrespectful...
This on the social media, you
on
mean?
the social media
social
platforms. But what I'm trying to explain that the social media platforms are being treated equally with our actual life. Therefore, what is stipulated by the Criminal Act and criminalized by the Criminal Act shall be criminalized by Law 36 for the year 2015. Whether if it was insulting, cursing, or calling bad names, anything that would hurt women shall be criminalized, of course. And when it comes to defaming women, such like slandering, so slandering also was criminalized by the law. And it is important here for me to stand and say that this is never a form of self-expression, or let's say freedom of expression. Because, you know, most of people would claim that if we went out and spoke in social media about specific information, or let's say a detail, it is a form of self-expression or freedom of expression. There's a difference between defaming, slandering, and what is criminalized by the law, the international laws, and the international conventions that Kuwait signed and ratified, and our domestic laws. So Kuwait signed and ratified the international conventions of civil and political rights, which stipulated in Article 19 that freedom of expression shall be granted by each state party and shall be regulated by its national laws, not to reach the incitement of breach, not to harm other people's reputation, dignity, privacy, confidential information, and others. So especially with our conservative society, in which women would be very harmed when someone distribute their confidential information, and so therefore such act is criminalized. Moreover, the law itself has stated that if ever a person used such information against a victim to blackmail them, then the crime, the punishment or the imprisonment of the crime shall be increased up to 2 years imprisonment.
Okay, so when we are related, first we mentioned like the cyber or social media abusing against women. Now we go like to a study, a latest study that was issued that says or stated that 52% of women in Kuwait faced gender-based violence. Do you think when it comes to the law 16th of the year 2020 regards of domestic violence, do you think it's enforced sufficiently or not?
Well, so the law was issued, and we were all pleased to see such law take place in our country. But when it comes to enforcement, we still need the enforcement mechanism, and we suffer from lack enforcement mechanism, in which we don't see shelters in the country. As you know, that the law stipulated the need and urged to establish shelter for women who are being abused. Till this moment, the law was not enforced efficiently because we don't have shelters yet. The law itself stipulated the means of abuse. So it's stated that any kind of mental, physical abuse, whether if it was through committing an act or preventing from doing a duty which would harm the victim, shall be called an abuse.
Thank you very much, Lawyer Atiyab Shati, for the valuable information you gave to us for this evening, and I really hope you enjoy your night.
Thank you, but there is one thing I'd like to add, if we have the time, of course. So, back to the Law 36 for the year 2015, the law itself differentiates between a person who commits an act and uses the confidential information for women against their own will, and a hacker. Because hacking is a crime, and it is an international crime. The law stipulated several codes to criminalize hacking, hijacking, or let's say possession of confidential information, using and distributing confidential information without the person's will.
Of course.
So therefore, if any woman is facing any form of, let's say, hacking, usually we've been receiving complaints about women, their phones are being hacked, and their server of, let's say, the iCloud server is being hacked, and someone is possessing their personal information, pictures and videos, and very confidential personal related documents and pictures. Therefore, I would call again and say that the law increased the crime, let's say, imprisonment, and made it reach up to 2 years imprisonment if that hacker ever used these confidential information to blackmail the victim, which is very important to point out for the viewers.
Yeah, it's really bad. Of course, both genders can be hacked, but when it comes to females, it's really sensitive issue because they have more privacy regarding to
because
their
of the
smartphones.
conservative community. Yet you touched on a very essential point. Gender-based violence is not only about women, but men could face violence too. Financial violence, mental violence, and the same study that you just mentioned has actually stated a number of Kuwaiti persons who were male persons who faced domestic violence and gender-based violence. Yes, it was financial violence.
That's really
financial abuses.
Thank you again for the valuable information you gave us. You were really generous with information with us tonight.
Unfortunately, the time is short. I would have
Hopefully, we'll see you soon with another segment. We are really anticipating this. Thank you very much, Atiyab. Dear viewers, let's go to our fifth report about Kuwait heritage. Stay tuned.